Good morning. Today we're going to be working on Topic 13, Lesson 2. So if you will look in your math packet and find Lesson 13, 2, and it is called Tell and Write Time to the Hour. You're also going to need your clock. You have a small one, I have a big one. You're going to need your small little clock with you to do this lesson. So if you don't have those things, go ahead and pause the video and then come back and we'll get started. Okay. All right. So today we're going to be looking at our I can statement that says, I can tell time to the hour using two different types of clocks. So if you look at your paper, you can see that you have a clock that looks like this, which is very similar to the one that you have at home. And then you can see a clock that looks like this. And you may have both kinds of clocks in your house. You may only have this kind, or you may only have this kind. We have both at my house. You may have a watch that tells time like this, or you may have a watch that tells time like this. So there are two different kinds of clocks. This one is called an analog clock, and this one is called a digital clock. Okay, so what they're asking us to do on this side, if you look at the green talk bubble, it says both of the clocks show the same time. Tell what time is shown. Then write one way the clocks are alike, that's the same, and one way they are different, okay? So if we look at the clock on your paper, remember yesterday you learned that the shorthand is the hour hand, and when that hand points to a number, that is the hour. It points to the number, it doesn't touch the number, okay? It's the shorter of the two hands. Then you have the long hand, which is the minute hand, and we learned yesterday as well, when it points to the 12, that means o'clock, okay? So if I have my clock here, right now it says 5 o'clock, okay? I could move it like this, and it would be 2 o'clock. I could move it like the one on our paper, and this one would be what? What would you put for that time right there? Okay, just like this one on your paper. Okay, if you look at the digital clock, it tells you the answer, and it's 9 o'clock. I always encourage parents to help their child learn how to tell time on an analog clock, because here you don't really have to know how to tell time. You just have to know how to be able to read it. And it says 9 o'clock. When we write o'clock, we write 00. Yesterday you practiced, and it was written on your paper with the letter O and then an apostrophe and the word clock. That's the word form of this part, okay? So when we write o'clock, we write 00, okay? So here on this clock, we would write the answer here for this one, and it would be 9, and there it is written out in words, o'clock. Okay, so let's talk about how they are alike. Okay, think of some ways that those two clocks are alike. Okay, you might say that they both tell you time. Yes, they do. Okay, they both tell that it is 9 o'clock. Okay, that's a way that they're the same. They both have numbers. Okay, how are they different? Okay, on this one, you have to look and see where are the hands pointing to tell the time on the clock. This one, you just have to read it. It tells you the time already. If we didn't have this one here, we would have to really look at those hands and see, okay, where is the hour hand pointing? It's pointing to the 9. That means the hour is 9. Where's the minute hand pointing? It's pointing to the 12. That means the time is o'clock. So 9 o'clock, okay? So you can see how they're alike and how they are different. Okay, let's turn your page. And I want you to find the green boxes on the back, and you can work along with me or listen as we go along. Okay, so he's saying, I eat breakfast at 7 o'clock. And if you look at the clock on the wall, the hour hand is pointing to the 7, and the minute hand is pointing to the 12. So it's 7 o'clock. He then says this clock shows 7 o'clock. Okay, so this is on the analog clock. This clock shows 7 o'clock another way. Okay, this one tells us 7 tells us the hour, And then the 00 tells us the minutes, which we read that as o'clock. So 7 o'clock is the same as 7 o'clock, written both ways, this way or this way. Okay, and you can see both of them in his talk bubble here. Okay, so on your do you understand show me box, it says do the clocks show the same time? Okay, let's look closely at these two clocks. Okay, where is the hour hand pointing on the analog clock? Okay, if you said 7, you're correct. It's pointing to the 7, and the minute hand is pointing to the 12. So that time would be what? 7 o'clock. Okay, if you said 7 o'clock, you're correct. Okay, so this one says 7 o'clock, and let's read this one. This one says 8, and how do we read the 00s? We read them as o'clock. So this one says 8 o'clock. So 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Are those the same times? No. 7 comes before 8. If you look on this clock here, you can see we have 7 and then we have 8. They are not the same times. This one is 1 hour earlier than this one. Okay, all right, let's look at your guided practice section on this page. It says draw the hands on the clock face, then write the time on the other clock. So let's look at number 1. Okay, they have, let me grab a pen. They have, I'm going to put this behind it so I can try to write. Okay, so they have the hour hand drawn and pointing to the 3, and they have the minute hand drawn and pointing to the 12. Okay, so if we look at that, where is that hour hand pointing? The hour hand is the long or short hand. If you said the short hand, you're correct. The hour hand points to the 3. So on my digital clock, I would write 3, and then you have a colon here. Those 2 dots are called a colon. We use those to separate our hour from our minutes. And then for o'clock, we always write 0, 0. Okay, so now my 2 clocks say the same thing, okay, because it told us here to write 3 o'clock. Okay, let's try this one together. Number 2, down at the bottom, it says 5 o'clock. Okay, so on this clock, I want you to take a minute and I want you to try to think about, okay, where do I draw the hour hand and where do I draw the minute hand? Okay, so take a minute to do that. Okay, so if you drew your hour hand, now remember the hour hand is short, it does not touch the number. So I'm going to turn it just a little bit in order for me to draw. It's going to point toward the 5, okay? And then my minute hand, because this says o'clock, is going to go all the way up and touch the 12. Okay, so now on my analog clock, I have drawn 5 o'clock. How would I write that on my digital clock? Okay, so what comes first? When we say this, exactly how we say it is exactly how we're going to write it on here. So we say 5, so 5 goes before my colon, because that's the hour, o'clock. And how do we write o'clock? 0, 0. Okay, so then we have 5 o'clock. We have it on our analog clock and on our digital clock. Okay, I want you to pause for just a minute and listen to me. I'm going to go over what you're going to do for the day, and then I want you to go back and I want you to do number 3 and number 4 and have whoever is at home with you check those two to make sure they're correct, because you don't want to do those incorrectly and then think you're doing them correctly and turn over to this side and do all of these incorrectly. Okay, so today you're going to be, again, draw the hands on the clock face, then write the time on the other clock. So you're going to read your times at the bottom of each set of clocks. It tells you exactly what time. You can't make up your own time for each one. You need to use the times that are written under the clocks, okay? So you're going to draw the hands on the analog clock, and you're going to write the numbers on the digital clock, okay? And you'll do that for those first 6. On number 11, it says, think about how hands move on a clock to help solve the problem. Now, let's talk about that for a second, okay? So this is my hour hand. It takes 12 hours for this hand to move all the way around on the clock, okay? every time this hour hand moves from 1 hour to the next, that's 60 minutes. So this minute hand moves all the way around the clock every hour because it counts the minutes, and there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, which is why we have the 60 when we get back up here to the top. That's been 60 minutes. Okay, so every time this goes around the clock one time, this hand moves from one number to the next. Okay, when it goes around again, where's my hour hand going to be? Okay, when my minute hand goes all the way around again, where do you think my hour hand is going to be? Okay, let me show you. Okay, so as this one moves around, if this were a real working clock, as this one moves around, my hour hand is going to move from my 11 all the way straight up to my 12. And look at that, when it gets to 12 o'clock, both hands point straight up. Okay, so minute hand around the clock takes 60 minutes. The hour hand around the clock takes 12 hours. Okay, all right, so let's look back at this question on your paper. Okay, so it says, think about how the hour or the hands move on a clock to help solve the problem. Number 11 says, Mary writes a pattern, then she erases some of the times. Write the missing times. So she's counting in a pattern, okay? And you know, when we count in patterns, we might count by ones, we might count by twos, we might count by threes, we might count by fives, by tens. She's counting by pattern down here, and I'll give you a hint. It is not one, okay? So she has 6 o'clock, then she has 8 o'clock, then she has 2 blanks, then she has 12 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry, this is actually 1 blank because you put the hour over here and the minutes over here. Okay, so she has 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, she has a missing time, 12 o'clock, and a missing time. See if you can figure out what pattern she's counting by and put the time that goes here. Now remember, your minutes go on this side, or your hour, I'm sorry, goes on this side, your minutes go on this side, and she has the next time, and that should fit the pattern. And then what would her last time in her pattern be? Okay, all right, let's look at the back side of your paper. All right, on the back side, number 12 says, the directions are just to solve each problem below. Number 12 says, Paul starts riding his bike at 1 o'clock. He rides for 1 hour. What time does, I called him Paul. It's Raul, I think is how you say that. So let me start over. Raul starts riding his bike at 1 o'clock. He rides for 1 hour. What time does Raul stop? Draw the hands on the clock face. Then write the time on the other clock. So this is what I would do if I were you. I would get my clock and I would set it. He starts riding at 1 o'clock. So I would set my clock for 1 o'clock. Okay. 1 is the hour, o'clock, because it's pointing to 12. He rides for 1 hour. What is 1 hour after 1 o'clock? That's what you'll need to draw on here and then write on your digital clock. Okay. Number 13 is a vocabulary question. It says, Lucy reads for 1 hour. She stops reading at 10 o'clock. What time did Lucy start reading? She didn't start reading at 10 o'clock. That's what you want to find out. She stopped reading at 10 o'clock. So what time did Lucy start reading? Draw the hands on the clock face, then write the hour Lucy starts reading. So you're going to draw what time Lucy starts reading on here, and then you're going to write it right here. You'll only write the hour because o'clock is already there for you. Okay. All right. Number 14 says, David goes to bed 2 hours before his mother. David's mother goes to bed at 11. What time does David, or what time, write the time, I'm sorry, I should look at that more closely. Write the time David goes to bed on the clock. So mom went to bed at 11. David went to bed 2 hours later. Again, you can use your clocks, set the time for 11 o'clock, and then think about what's 2 hours after that and write that on your digital clock. And your last one, number 15, says, Maribel washes dishes after 6 o'clock and before 9 o'clock. Which clock shows a time Maribel might wash the dishes? Choose all that apply. So she washes them after 6 o'clock, but before 9 o'clock. Okay, so which of these 4 clocks shows a time that Maribel could have washed the dishes? And I'm going to give you a hint. It says choose all that apply. That means there's more than one answer. Okay, so you're looking for more than one answer to that question. Okay, all right, good luck. Have fun.